Hello and welcome to a series of video-based training tutorials for the 3D Building Designer software. This particular video has been designed as an introduction to the free version of the software for first-time users. It covers the 4 basic steps needed to get up and running and using the software as fast as possible. Step 1 is navigation. That is, learning how to use your mouse to move in and around our 3D scene. We'll learn how to move up and down, left and right, and even forwards and backwards, that is in and out of a 3D virtual world. Step 2 is 3D objects management. Once we have the fundamentals of navigation worked out, we can then move on to explain how we work with 3D objects that collectively make up our scene. Step 3 is material, color, and finishes management. The ability to change the material, color, and finishes on any specific object in a scene means that a library of a few hundred objects can use every color and texture of the rainbow, and this will exponentially increase their visual impact and value in your models. And finally, we're going to show you how to draw out and create a 3D room from scratch that you can then go ahead and fit out and finish, including exploring colors, fittings, and even furniture and decorations. Even with the free version of the software, you can create a model of just about any room you can think of. There really aren't any limits to the complexity of the room shape or size using the 3D Building Designer. So let's get started with today's video. As counterintuitive as it might sound, the hardest thing for most first-time users of our software to learn is simply moving in and around a 3D virtual world using a 2D computer mouse. If you've ever played any 3D computer games before, you'll understand why getting started with 3D navigation using a 2D mouse can seem a little tricky just to start. You see, we're not going to be moving just up and down and side to side like you would do in any normal CAD or 2D drawing software. In the 3D Building Designer, we're going to be moving through all 3 axes in space, up and down, side to side, and even backwards and forwards, sometimes in all 3 dimensions at the same time. So if you find all this a little tricky to begin with, don't worry, you're definitely not alone. I've been working with virtual 3D environments for over 10 years, and it still takes me a minute or two to orientate myself whenever I try out some new 3D program. But by following along with these instructions and a little practice, you'll be up and running in no time. And I promise, after a few minutes of working out how to move around our virtual 3D world, inserting and working with objects like furniture and landscaping, including changing their materials, colors, and finishes, is going to be very easy. First, if you didn't pick up on this from the website, to use this type of software, you must have a separate plug-in style mouse fitted to your computer. Those integrated mouse pads that come built into laptops are totally unsuited to any sort of detail or precision mouse control, and trying to use one here is a guarantee of you ending up frustrated and annoyed. So when we have our mouse plugged in, if you haven't already done so, use the File menu at the top left-hand side of the screen to access the project control area of the software. As we're going to be learning about navigation first, let's open up a partially built 3D room model that we can then use not only to show you how to move, but also some of the capabilities of the software whilst we're at it. So choose File, File Open, look down through the menu choices for where it says Start from Template, and then the sub-menu Training Material Templates. You should see a thumbnail of the introduction video template in the viewing window. When you double click on this thumbnail, it'll open the file. Give the file a project name, and you can include your name and a description if you wish, but this detail is really more value when we get into creating larger projects with a number of variations or alternatives that you're exploring, where keeping track of these changes will be very useful. Once this is done, you should see a file open, and when it's complete, you'll see what looks like a small, partially assembled 3D room model. Now there are 2 parts to navigation. The first is to use the mouse to move up and down, left and right, and forwards and backwards in a scene. To use these navigation controls, you need to press and hold down the mouse buttons whilst you move the mouse. So try holding down the right-hand mouse button and move the mouse on your mouse mat. Move the mouse to the left and then to the right. Notice how when you hold down the right-hand mouse button and move the mouse to the left and right, the image on the screen moves to the left and right with you. Now move the mouse up and down. Notice how when you hold down the right hand mouse button and move the mouse up and down, the image on the screen moves up and down with you. So that's how we move up and down and left and right. As I said in the introduction, it might seem a bit strange at first, but I'm sure you'll agree it's more strange than difficult. And the more you practice this, the more natural this movement will seem. Now we need to move in and out of the scene, or forwards and backwards if you will. If you're using a wheel mouse, you can roll the wheel on the mouse to zoom in and out of the scene. If you don't have a wheel on your mouse, you'll need to hold down the left-hand mouse button and move the mouse up and down. It's the same movement that we just practiced, but this time it's done with a left-hand mouse button held down. Notice you can also go left and right using the same mouse control. An alternative whilst you're getting started is to use the arrow keys on the keyboard. The up and down arrow keys will do the same as the mouse wheel and zoom you in and out. However, I don't recommend you using this technique if you're serious about using the software, as you'll find it very slow compared to the mouse once you get the hang of how everything works. As I said earlier, don't worry if you find all this a bit strange to begin with. If you're not used to 3D environments, that's all perfectly natural and will all get easier with a few minutes practice and patience. Here's a really, really important tip, so please listen carefully. If you get completely turned around in the model, upside down, inside out, and you just can't work out what you're looking at, the sky's the ground and the ground's the sky, try pressing the R key on your computer keyboard. This will reset the camera to the start position and you can go from there. So remember, press R for camera reset. Part 2 of navigation is about what we call focus or pivot points. Notice how, as we use the mouse controls, we moved around a point in space that was somewhere near the middle of the model. This is what we call a focus or pivot point, where we visually pivot around this point in 3D space. Now, clearly what we want to be able to do is change the location of that pivot point so that we can move around the entire 3D scene, looking, inspecting, and building as we go. And to do that, from time to time, we need to physically move the pivot point to a new location in the scene. We move the pivot point by placing the on-screen mouse cursor over the point in the scene where we want to make the new pivot point or focus point, and double-click with a left-hand mouse button. And guess what? That's it. Once you've done that, you've mastered what most people would consider to be the hardest part of 3D software for new users, navigating in 3D space with a 2D mouse. So congratulations, with just that, you're already more than halfway there. I would suggest that now you pause this video and take a few minutes to look around the demo room model, just practicing your new navigation skills, using the mouse to move left and right, up and down, and in and out of the scene, and setting new focus points as you go. Don't worry, there are no limits to the number of pivot points we can create. They're created on the fly, so to speak, not stored anywhere. So just keep practicing, double click and move, double click and move. Once you've perfected that, check out how you can create a pivot point on both horizontal or vertical surfaces like walls. Now, this is super important. The better your skills at navigation before you try to move on to the next stage, working with 3D objects, the quicker you'll be able to move around and build your own 3D models. Bad navigation skills is the one thing that will hold you back or slow you down. So go and practice navigating in 3D and then come back when you're feeling confident and we can talk about the fun of working with 3D objects that make up the scene. So I'll see you again when you get back. Welcome back to our video training series. This particular video is designed to help new users get up and running with the free version of the 3D Building Designer as quickly as possible. In part 1 of this video, we covered what many would describe as the hardest part of learning 3D software for new users, that of navigating in all 3 dimensions using a 2-dimensional mouse. Now that we have a good understanding of how we do that, we can move on to the fun part, working with 3D objects in our virtual world. If you look at the top of the screen of the software, you'll see a series of tabs called a ribbon control. This ribbon control is designed specifically to help new users by laying out the main tools that we use with 3D objects and materials using large, easy to identify control buttons. So let's run through the tools in the free version and explain what they do and then give you a chance to try them out in a sample model. The first tab in the ribbon control is the Help File tab. Chances are if you're watching this, then you've found what that tab does already. Just remember that you can use this tab to open and review the Fast Start video training material anytime you need it. The second tab in the ribbon control is the 3D Objects tab. The tools that are available from this tab are as follows. 1. Open the 3D Object Library. Clicking on this button opens up a window that allows you to browse the 3D objects that you have available in your version of the software to insert into the current scene. The drop-down menu allows you to scroll through the various library categories. You'll see on the free version of the software, we include our family or living area 3D Object Library Pack, which is over 100 fully configurable and rescalable 3D objects, and you can even change the materials of construction on most of these free objects. I'll explain in a few minutes how you can add to this starter library of 100 objects, either using third-party 3D objects downloaded from the internet, making your own using a digital camera, or by adding more objects from our pre-built range of furniture and material library expansion packs. So we insert an object from the object library into the 3D scene by the following sequence. Step 1. Determine where in the scene you want to insert the object. Step 2. Locate the on-screen mouse cursor over that point and then click on that spot using the left-hand mouse button. Step 3. Click on the visual thumbnail of the object in the library browser window to have that particular object inserted at the location you just chose. And that's it. The object should now be in the scene and you can move it and/or rotate it into its final place. The next button along is the Move 3D Object button. To move an object in the scene, use the following sequence. Step 1. Click on the object you want to move in the scene with the left-hand mouse button. Step 2. Click on the Move 3D Object button. When it's correctly selected, you should see the Move 3D Object button highlighted in orange, and the 3D object itself will start to glow. Then, when both the 3D Object Move button is highlighted and the 3D object itself is glowing, hold down the left-hand mouse button and move the mouse. You should see the object in the scene move with you. When you get to the point in the scene where you want the object to be, simply release the mouse button. If you're having trouble with this, a common mistake for first-time users is to either not hold down the mouse button or to hold down the wrong mouse button. The left-hand mouse button is used to move an object left and right and up and down, and the right-hand mouse button will raise the 3D object up into the air and lower it back down again. The next button along on the 3D Objects tab is the Rotate 3D Object button. This button follows fundamentally the same sequence as the previous Move 3D Object button. To rotate an object in the scene, use the following sequence. Click on the object that you want to rotate with the left-hand mouse button, and then click on the Rotate 3D Object button. Again, when it's correctly selected, you should see the 3D Object Rotate button highlighted in orange, and the 3D object itself will start to glow. Then, when both the 3D Object Rotate button is highlighted and the 3D object itself is glowing, hold down the left-hand mouse button and move the mouse. You should see the object in the scene rotate around its center point. Again, the most common mistake for first-time users here is to either not hold down the mouse button or to hold down the wrong mouse button. The left-hand mouse button is to rotate the object left and right, and the right-hand mouse button will tumble the object over itself, head over heels as it were. The next button along is the Delete 3D Object button. To delete an object in the scene, use the following sequence. Click on the object you want to delete with the left-hand mouse button and then click on the Delete 3D Object button. Alternatively, you can click on the object you want to delete and hit the Delete key on your keyboard. There are actually a ton of shortcuts and advanced moves that we'll teach you later on. But for now, as a first-time user's tutorial, it's enough just to remember press delete to delete and R to reset the camera to the start position if you get lost or turned upside down. After the Object Delete button, we have the Open Object Properties dialog box. First-time users don't really need to play around with this if they don't want to. The Object Properties dialog box is where the properties for an individual object can be reviewed and changed if required. A simple example of what you might change here is the scale of an object, the X, Y, Z dimensions of a piece of furniture, for example, or the scale of material in the way that it applies to an object. We might want to make the floor tile pattern appear a little larger or smaller, for example, and this is where we would do it. For those interested in this functionality, a little experimentation should show how the settings work, and if not, there are advanced tutorials that cover this in detail in the members area. Hopefully the undo and redo buttons will already be familiar to everyone. Their function is to simply undo, redo any changes that you make that you're not happy with. Like the Object Properties dialog box, I'm not going to explain in detail here how the Import 3ds and 3D Photo tools work. Safe to say that there are literally thousands of compatible model libraries available on the internet today. We provide the 3ds import functionality for users even in the free version so that you can add to the object library yourself. That said, it's our experience that the quality and completeness of 3D object libraries is directly proportional to their cost. You can scrounge around and find free model collections here and there, but the quality is generally poor to very poor, and some of the first-class collections that are very professionally done can actually cost several $100s just for a handful of items. That's why we make our 3D objects and material expansion packs available in the members area. We hope that users will simply choose to use our collection as a base for their library and then add whatever else they want from third-party collections as they go. Again, we'll cover the how-to of finding and even creating your own additional materials and 3D objects and placing them into the library in our members area. The final button in this tab is for the return to navigation view mode. At any time you find the navigation controls unresponsive, you can click this icon to release you from the previous tool mode and place you back into navigation mode, where you can use your mouse to again move around the model. The next tab across on the ribbon control is the Material Management tab. The tools that are available from this tab are as follows. 1. Open the material library. To apply a material, color, or texture to a 3D object or surface in a scene, we need to be able to choose which material we want to apply from our library of materials. Now, we provide a small number of materials in the free version of the software. However, just as with the 3D objects, it's possible for you to expand this selection either with third-party seamless textures, of which there are again literally thousands of libraries available on the internet today, or by using one of our library expansion packs from the members area. To apply new material to an object or surface in the scene, use the following sequence. Step 1, click on the object you want to add the new material to. Step 2, click on the Open Materials Library button. This will open a new dialog box where you can browse through all the current textures in your library. Use the icon in the top right-hand corner of this window to access library categories. When you find a material you like, double-click the thumbnail of that material. That material will then be applied to the object selected in step 1 of this process. If you find the material has applied itself to the wrong object or the wrong surface, use the Undo Last Action tool and repeat the process, this time making sure that you select the correct object or surface in step 1. Like most Windows application, you can reposition and resize the materials pop-up window to suit your personal preferences. I like to move it across all the way to the left-hand side of the screen so I can see the 3D scene better and then tab through a smaller number of materials. But where you place it is of course your choice. The next tool across on the Materials Management tab is the Color Wheel tool. When you click on this tool, as with all 3D Building Designer tools, you should see the tool icon highlight in orange. You can then press and hold down either the left hand or the right hand mouse buttons to activate the functions of the tool. Holding down the left hand mouse button opens up a color pinwheel. Moving the mouse around the pinwheel applies a tint to the surface of the object selected in step 1. When you get to the color you want, simply take your finger off the mouse and the new color will be fixed. With the very same color wheel tool selected, but holding down the right hand mouse button opens up a transparency tool. Moving the mouse around the transparency scale adds or removes transparency to the surface or object selected. When you get to the transparency level you want, again, simply take your finger off the right hand mouse button and the transparency level for that object will be fixed. The Copy Material Properties button. Sometimes when we're working on a complex model and have made a lot of changes to a surface or object's material properties, we might want to copy all of those same attributes to another object or surface in the scene. Let's say, for example, we're working on a dining chair. Now, originally we chose a stock chair from our library of objects, but then we proceeded to change the following. We changed the frame and the upholstery material. We changed the scale of the fabric, and then we even added a tint to the new materials. Now, What we want to do is apply those same attributes to all the other chairs in the room. Rather than have to go through that process for each object in the scene, we can use the Copy Material Properties tool. We simply click on the surface of the object that we want to use as the master material, in other words, the object that has all the properties to be transferred, hold down the left-hand mouse button and drag the cursor over to the surface that you wish to apply these properties to. When you're over the new object, let the mouse button go and you should see that object inherit all the master object material properties. Of course, if you miss the object, you can simply use the undo tool and try again. After the Copy Property Materials tool, we again have the Open Object Properties dialog box, the Undo and Redo Last Action tools, and the Return to Navigation View Mode tool. These three tools are exactly the same as on the 3D Objects tab. We just provide them again here. The last set of tools in the free version of the software is found under the Floor-Based Tools tab. This is the last set of tools in the free version of the software, but it's also the first of the context-sensitive tools that we make available in the members area. One of the reasons that 3D Building Designer is far easier to use than any other 3D home design software is we don't crowd the scene with tools that beginners are unlikely to need all the time. 3D objects and material management tools are used so often in 3D modeling that it just makes sense to have big, high visibility icons for accessing these tools. Whereas things like importing and scaling a set of floor plans, by comparison, are going to be used incredibly rarely. Heck, you're likely to only do it once per project. We manage this imbalance of demand on tools by only showing the advanced tools when it makes sense. Of course, you can override that once you know what you're doing, but for beginners, we found that the less busy and less cluttered the screen is with tools, the faster the learning curve becomes. So to access the last set of tools in the free version, click on the image in the main startup scene. This image is actually a photo image applied to a floor-based segment, but we can apply any image we like here. In a minute, I'm going to show you how to change this main image out for a set of floor plans. When you click on the image, you should see a new tab appear that contains a set of tools quite specific to floor bases. These are the tools that you'll need if you want to create a room with a complex shape or size not represented in a generic room templates. The first tool in the Floor-Based Tools tab is the Trace Out Floor Plan tool. Now you can use the Trace Out Floor Plan tool with or without a set of plans. Let's quickly run through both methods and show you how easy it is to create your own custom sized rooms. First, let's create a room based on known dimensions but without a set of plans to guide us. We activate the Trace Out Floor Plan tool by clicking on the tool icon. As usual, you know it's activated when it's highlighted in orange. You should now see a small crosshair that's been activated when the mouse cursor appears on the screen. When you click on the ground with the Trace Out Floor Plan tool active and move the mouse away from that point, you'll see a yellow line being dragged out from the anchor point. Notice the distance units being displayed on the screen whilst we do this. You can then move the mouse out to the distance that you want the next corner to be from the starting point and click the left-hand mouse button. Each additional mouse click lays down another corner location. You can set down as many corner locations as you want. There really aren't any limitations to how complex or how large the room can be, even in the free version of the software. You'll notice that when you end up back at the starting point, that is the first control point you created, the line color will change from yellow to blue. Clicking the right-hand mouse button at this point will close off the foundation. Notice how when we do that, the tools in the toolbar change again. That's because we've moved on to the next logical step in the process, that of creating walls from this outline. So here's where we present the tool to do just that. This new tool says create walls from a foundation and opens a dialog box for setting the wall height and wall depth. So that's how we create a room from scratch. Let's say, however, we have a set of plans that we want to use as a template to create a 3D model from. Either a traditional set of 2D CAD drawings or even something as simple as a back of the cocktail napkin design sketch. The tool next to the Trace Out Floor Plan tool allows us to import an image from a folder anywhere on a computer. Clicking on the tool icon opens up a dialog box that should be pretty self-explanatory. We locate the folder that contains your floor plan and double click on the icon to import it into the scene. You can import any image file format you like. This includes JPEG, PNG, bitmap, Targa, and even TIFF, but not PDFs. PDFs aren't actually an image file. If you only have a PDF file, simply export it as an image using your PDF viewer software. If you get stuck, detailed instructions on how to do this are in the members area. Once the image has been imported into the scene, the next tool along allows us to scale the plans to fit our 3D world. This means that the objects and materials in our library will match the scale of the plans. We activate the scale plan icon and drag the mouse across a known distance on the image. You can use the scale on a set of floor plans, or if you can't find a scale, you can use any known distance, like a doorway for example, that you know the measurement of. Once we've imported and scaled our floor plan, we can then go back to our trace out floor plan tool, but this time we have the underlying floor plan to guide our placement of corner locations. Closing of the foundation will present the Create Walls tool dialog. Finally, if you're using a floor plan, when the basic room is in place, the floor is ready for a material to be applied to that surface, but you might want to continue to see and to reference the underlying floor plan. So you can use the material controls to make the floor semi-transparent or fully transparent whilst you construct the model, and then turn it back to a solid material again when you're finished. A couple of quick reminders that we know new users will find very helpful. One, if you get lost navigating within the model at any time, press the R key on your computer keyboard to reset you to the starting location. Two, you're going to want to add some additional materials and 3D objects for use in the software. To me, that's just an expectation of this type of software. The idea that we're going to be able to provide a comprehensive library of objects and materials that meets everyone's needs in every country we service in a starter pack is, well, to be honest, just being naive. There are literally millions of products, materials, colors, and choices on the market today. And the only way that you can create a realistic, engaging, and immersive model of what your home, office, kitchen, or landscaping project is going to look like before it's been built is to have the ability to quickly and easily create new materials and 3D objects and expand the default library whenever you want. We provide help on where to find free resources, how to create your own using nothing but a digital camera, as well as our own library expansion packages that we've developed over the last 5 years in the members area. 3, if you want to do more than one room at a time, in other words, you want to model your entire home or your office, you can access the additional tools to do that in the members area. So that's it for this video. We've covered the 4 basic steps that you need to know to get up and running as fast as possible with a 3D Building Designer. I hope that you enjoy the software, and if you have any questions, drop us an email at support@3dbuildingdesigner.com or check out the members area on our website. Thanks for your time.